thank you for staying to the end of the day. When I was asked to present on whole school development planning, I did think, that's a very exciting topic. I've just seen a great presentation on the IB and all sorts of learning things today. However, I'll do my best. It is essentially a bit of a dry sort of systems presentation, but I want to try to give you a bit of a flavour of, I suppose, the conditions needed at our school that we feel are the most important elements, most important things that we need to have in place before we even launch into effective planning, before we even set up those systems. The culture of the school, for want of a better word. So I'm going to go through a little bit about the culture and what we feel should be important, then the nitty-gritty, perhaps the practical things that you might like to know about, things that you might want to adapt for your school. There'll be lots of things there that you are very familiar with, CEF forms, data sheets, all that sort of thing. So I just wanted to point out some of the particular things that we use that already, whilst I was putting this together, I'm already changing my mind. I'm already thinking, I don't like that form anymore, that self-evaluation system that we use. And I think that's probably the sign of a good school. In terms of planning, you're always thinking, you're always trying to improve, you're always looking at your systems to try to make them better. So please do not hold these up as the way to plan to implement effective school planning in your school. You will undoubtedly have much better systems than ours. The point being, we're always trying to improve. So, my name is Darren Colson. I'm the head teacher at Jess Arabian Ranch's primary section. We're part of a through school, 3 to 18 school, so it's primary and secondary on the same site. And then our sister school, Jess Jumeirah, which some of you will have heard of, has been in Dubai a long time now, about 40 years, is just a primary school. And I used to work there as well for a very long time. So I know Jess and I know the systems very well. I've always explained all of that. What do we need to do first? What things do we need? How should our school look and feel if we're going to be successful? I've just found a couple of quotations there that sum up probably the most important thing about planning, leadership. For me, some of you may have heard of Fred Truman, famous cricketer. Why he is quoted, I really don't know. He was a great bowler, I don't think he was such a great leader. But what he says, if he allegedly said that, it rang true with me. Charles Handy, a leader shapes and shares a vision which gives point to the work of others. I like that one. And leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. I'm going to talk a lot about vision. So a question to ask yourselves, and I might give you 2 minutes. You don't want to sit there and listen to me for half an hour. Not good pedagogy, as we all know. But I might ask you to do this in a moment. Do you have dynamic leadership teams in your school? Not just in your senior management. Do you have in your PE team, in your special needs department, in your teaching assistants team? Is there somebody in there who's a bit of a spark for change? Is there somebody in there who you know you can trust with a job? Who you know will seek opportunities? Do you distribute leadership? I don't just mean delegate. I don't just mean give everybody jobs. I mean, are there people on your staff again who you know who you can empower to make change? You can empower to make a plan, and you know they'll see it through. It takes a long time to get there. It's not easy. But these are some of the challenges we face if we're really going to have effective planning. And do the staff collaborate well? Are they happy to collaborate? It's an absolute given that you have some fantastic talent in your schools, I'm sure. Do you tap into that talent well enough? Are people talking about learning enough? Or is it, let's go to our classrooms, let's deliver the curriculum, yes, we're all working hard, and we've got parents' evening, and then we go home? Is it more than that? To have really good planning, it needs to be more than that, I would argue. And when you have the plans in place, do you monitor rigorously? Do you follow up? Or do you leave it to those key people and say, right, over to you, and never check? Because somebody has to check, somebody has to measure what you're doing, somebody has to know, is it working, and adapt and change your path accordingly. We have something called, it's a bit of a buzzword in the UK at the moment, professional learning community. This is the sort of, the way that performance management, professional development has evolved. I did a dissertation many years ago on the tension between performance management and professional development. And I would imagine you have similar problems or tensions in your school with a top-down performance management. We need to observe lessons, our teachers delivering our mantra, what we hope our children getting a really great experience. With the other end of that spectrum, Are teachers working collaboratively? Are they really striving to be better? Are they researching? Are they enjoying their job? And somewhere in the middle, you've got to find a common ground. Somewhere, are you a school that's closer to the performance management end? It's a little bit top down, perhaps a little bit negative. Are you a school at this end, where everybody is really seeking to improve? In my school, the way that, certainly the position in time that we're at, in particular, I'm fairly new to the school, I've only been there a year. I felt that we needed to go further along this journey in terms of professional development, in terms of trying to get that buzz about teaching and learning. We've set up all sorts of systems now, we've signed up to all sorts of online groups. I've got the teachers in working groups working together on various projects to do with growth mindset, Carol Dweck, I'm sure many of you are aware of that, and challenge, reflection, real teaching and learning stuff, the stuff they should be interested in, the stuff you hope your staff are really all about. You don't really want them bothered with administration. Somebody said to me the other day, if it's not about learning, it's administration. I thought, yeah, that's true, and I know already I'm spending too much time in my office. So really trying to build that culture of professional learning and supporting it, making sure they do have time in every meeting there's a learning focus, that it isn't all about management. So that's what professional learning community means, and that's one of the central tenets of making sure effective planning is going to work. Other conditions, I'll just pick out a couple of those things that I think are important. I talked about growth mindset. Do your teachers have the right mindset? Do your staff? Do they have the right mindset? Sometimes do you have to have difficult conversations with people who perhaps don't have the right mindset? Are they open-minded? Are they fixed? Are they a little bit closed? Are they glass half empty sort of people? You all have them in your staff rooms, I'm sure. But do you have those courageous conversations with those people? Because we need to. As leaders, we need to. Passion and energy. If you haven't got that, what have you got? You really want people who want the best for the kids in the rooms. Children only get one chance. Do your staff believe in that? This is their one chance of education. You can all remember, I'm sure, brilliant teachers when you were in school. The teachers you remember now who ticked your box because they love sport just like you did. The teachers who had those private conversations with you about your favourite football team. The teachers who knew what your hobbies were. Those are the teachers you remember. The ones who spoke passionately about their subjects. But it should reflect something on your promise to parents. It should reflect something about who you are as a school. Is it aspirational enough? I just sat through a really good talk about the IB. We're an IB school. I don't know if we're encapsulating the IB as well as Greenfield, as the talk that I just had. So have those conversations. Are you really living your vision, and is it the vision you want for your school? And do you review it regularly? The last time our vision was reviewed was about 5 years ago. It's out of date. I'll show you now. Is it a vision or is it a mission? I don't know. I can never tell you the difference between the definition of those two. However, it's the IB sort of principles around the outside with a bit of the UK, I forget what they called it now, but the areas: confident individuals, responsible citizens, effective contributors, successful learners. And those are then broken down. Not sure if that's a vision at all. I just want to read you something, hence we're changing it. Right, I just want to read you something. This is a great book. I just came across this book this summer. I don't know if any of you have. Leadership with a Moral Purpose, Turning Your School Inside Out. Lots about planning. Lots of other good things as well, but it gives a real rationale for planning. And this book talks about visioning. This guy calls it whole brain visioning. And he talks about this school. I'll just give you the background of this school's vision. For example, there is one school which I visit where there is a picture of a starfish in each classroom. It is accompanied by the words, "Make a difference." As part of this school's visioning exercise, the school had looked at the significance of an old folk tale which goes something like this. So here's the folk tale. Apologies if you've heard it. A man and his son were walking along the beach late one evening as the tide was going out. The beach was strewn with starfish that had been washed up by the stormy seas earlier in the day. The young boy stopped walking and, to the dismay of his father, started picking up the starfish and throwing them back into the sea. His father, who was keen to keep moving, said, "Why are you doing that, son?" The young boy replied that he was returning the starfish to the sea where they belonged. The boy's father looked at him and said, "But there are too many of them, and you'll never make a difference." Whereupon the boy picked up one final starfish and tossed it into the sea and said, "Well, I made a difference to that one." The emblem of the starfish in each classroom in this school is to remind everyone that each day they should strive to make a positive difference. Now that's a vision. When I read that, I like that. Jess may well have that vision in a couple of years, we'll see, if I have anything to do with it. But make sure your vision is memorable, I suspect. It's possibly the thing that's driving me at the moment in terms of vision, and is particular to your context, your school. We all have pressures here. DSIB visiting regularly, KHDA instructions, compliance and issues. If you can, yes, of course, tick those boxes, but make your school special. Make your school reflect your vision. What should we do next? So we've got a vision. How are we going to put that into operation? How are we going to live it? Through lots of discussion. Just distribute the leadership. Create your plans, long, medium term. Get people involved, working together so the plan is as good as it can be. Have success criteria. We have them in lessons. Why don't we have them for teachers with their plans? You know, you need to know where you're going. The teachers need to know where they're going. Make sure you've got the right personnel, and obviously have a time frame. We've talked about SMART targets for years. There must be a time frame, otherwise you have inertia. Nothing much happens. You have to keep relentlessly pursuing these action plans, making sure they're being lived. So here's an example. Not by any means, as I said earlier, a brilliant example. This is just our whole school primary section action plan from last year. And it's just the first page. And there were pages of this, I don't know, about 6 or 7 pages. So the key thing, what's the focus, what's the purpose, how is it going to be done, what's the time scale, who's going to do it, what's your success criteria. As I said, these go on, and the main headings are at the top there. This is just what we call the sort of school improvement plan with the main elements, the things we're driving this year. You can't drive too many priorities. Sitting behind this, you have a breakdown of individual subject action plans. In this case, this is an example of an English, first page of an English action plan from the English subject coordinator. Same thing, targets, how will it be done, timescale, dates, success criteria. This has already changed actually, but it's the same idea. Make sure you have these systems in place. This is about living that vision. Their connection to school-based influences, the school improvement plan, the 3 to 18 vision, DSIB, what are the influences from them? They then have to have a meeting with line managers to explain that vision, to plot the quality assurance, which we'll go on to next. So we've got a plan, we've got a vision. Are we doing what we've agreed? Is there accountability, and is there rigorous review? So an example of how we monitor what's going on. This is this term actually, we call it QA in our school, term 1. And that, week by week, essentially outlines to the staff what is going to be monitored when, who by. The review at the end will be what we found out, the general headlines, but there will be individual review, feedback sheets, areas for development, some schools call it even better if, systems in place so that, again, the action plan leads to review, leads to forward thinking, leads to improvement, leads to impact. There's an example of a termly, and we do that every term. We've actually developed that now. The previous slide where we got subject leaders to talk about the influences that should affect, that should devise your action plan, we've actually asked them to, in terms of in the notion of distributing leadership, to plan the whole year. What do they want to get involved in? Not what do I want to tell them maths planning needs looking at. You tell me. You're the subject leader. You tell me where the weaknesses are and how are you going to find out. What evidence trails are you going to look for? Do you want to go in and see some lessons in various phases? Do you want to collect some work in to look at work scrutiny? Do you want to look at learning environments? You tell me and plot it for the year. Everybody knows where they stand for the whole year. It'll change perhaps, it'll be tweaked, but roughly we know where we're going. And that's this. Very difficult to read. But you can see the year groups down the side. The previous slide is sort of immersed in there as well. And then there are the other things that subject leaders will get involved in for the 3 terms. Summer term, as you can see, is quite light, as perhaps it should be. The summer term in every school is always a little bit mad. I'm in charge, the people in charge of those subjects, they come to me when they're talking about action plans, they come to me when they're talking about quality assurance, they come to me when they're talking about data, they come to me when they're talking about budgeting and finance, and let's improve this area. I oversee all of it anyway, but we just, it was too much. There was too much going on. We're all trying to look at everything. I'm sure many of you sit on something similar. So now we've got the action vision, we've got the plan, we've monitored it. We've monitored it. How are we doing? How do we know if it's successful or not? Some of the next slides you will all recognise. Through yourself, through your monitoring systems, collecting in staff voice, pupil voice, do you check regularly what the children are thinking? Again, and it's just fresh in my mind, the Greenfield presentation I just saw, massive emphasis on student voice. It's the IB philosophy, and pitching the work at the student choice, student voice, pitching it at their level. The gentleman next door was explaining that we would all be very surprised at the results of that. The results are fantastic in terms of academic results, if we only listen a little bit more. Performance management systems, professional learning community, and so on. So that is just a page of a set from our set from last year for DSIB. But this is the time when you really start analysing, isn't it? And you start reviewing and you start thinking, actually, how well are we doing? What evidence do we have for what was on that action plan? What evidence do we have in terms of data? Foundation stage progress in knowledge and understanding of the world. Something that came up in our school last year was technology, use of technology from Foundation 1 to Foundation 2. I didn't even know it existed. However, we're weak. Children are weak on it. So there's a big programme in place this year to buy a lot of stuff to address that small little point. There is a point to data, is what I'm getting at, if you use it properly. And that's the second page, all to do with data collection and another part of the set. Okay, how do we know then? We talked about data just now. Surveys, you know through collecting in pupil work. How do you know it's good? How do you know it isn't? You must have systems to collect things, analyse them, talk about them. And that's just some SATs data that we had a couple of years ago. But again, that's just sort of end of the process data. We use the UK SAT system in primary school. A key document for us. This is the academic stuff that's important. Okay, I've gone back to the sort of belief system now of our school rather than the nitty-gritty. I've mentioned some of this already. There must be a constant focus on teaching and learning. The teachers are optimistic, passionate. And I'll talk a little bit there, I mentioned it earlier, drains and radiators. Again, you'll have people in the staff room who perhaps, just quoting this book again, what do you value in your school is so important. Your vision will set out a little bit of that, and your action plans and your mission. So there's an example here of a school that they actually value, yes, level 4s, level 5, but children who can swim at least 25 metres. Children experiencing at least 2 residential visits, and they've quoted figures, 100%. 100%, this is their target. Children achieving level 4, I've done those ones. Children playing a musical instrument, 80% plus. Children participating in extracurricular, 75% plus. Do you measure those things? What things do you value in your school? Write them down and measure them and try and improve them. If it's what's important to you, start to live it in your school and share that culture amongst your staff. Amount of money raised for charity each year. I'm not saying that's necessarily a sophisticated way to run your school, but it's important. It's practical, day-to-day, you living your vision. Just a couple of books that I think are good if you come across them. This one actually isn't so much about whole school effective planning, but it's just a brilliant book for whole school progress. There's another book this guy wrote called Whole School Teaching and Learning the Lazy Way or something. It has this philosophy. Essentially it means it's not about teachers being lazy, it's about teachers being facilitators and planning great lessons, and the devil's in the detail, as you know, so that there is challenge and differentiation, but teachers then standing back. And that's a whole school sort of approach to particularly getting the staff on board. And then the other one I've mentioned, our teachers sit in staff rooms day after day discussing the quality of leadership over their milky coffees. It is the way of the world. They are desperate to be part of a vision for the future. They want to hang on to your every word and take part in an exciting journey to a better future. The children look at their head teacher as he or she stands before them, willing them to be the best in the game and to provide an awesome childhood full of discovery and fun. School leaders must not let them down. They must remember, the most pathetic person in the world is someone with sight but no vision.